Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a massive leap. We're shifting away from your personal household budget and looking at the big picture, the fascinating, gigantic machinery of national income. You know how to check your own bank balance, right? But how exactly does an entire country check its balance?
I mean, just imagine the sheer scale of it. Trying to chart literally every single rupee spent and earned across a nation of over a billion people. We're talking about an economy built on massive supply chains, endless taxes, global exports, the whole shebang. It's the ultimate macroeconomic puzzle. And honestly, solving it is the only way a country actually knows if it's growing or just stagnating. To keep us on track, here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, the nation's wallet. Second, defining national income. Third, the circular money flow. And fourth, decoding GDP and beyond. All right, part one, the nation's wallet. So it all really begins with one fundamental question. How would you measure the wealth of a modern money economy? See, because we live in a system where goods and services are exchanged for currency, we absolutely have to express national income in terms of money. You can't exactly throw 1,000,000 tractors and 1 billion bags of wheat onto a giant scale, right? You've got to find their unified monetary value. But getting to a reliable, accurate number, that took some serious, organized effort. And the historical journey here is actually super fascinating. Prior to 1949, there were zero regular, official government efforts to compile this data in India. None. You just had individual economists making, well, educated guesses. It wasn't until August 1949 that the government finally formed the National Income Committee to track this systematically. That early initiative sparked a legacy, a torch, that's now carried by the Central Statistical Organization, or CSO, which publishes our national data every single year. And we absolutely have to give credit where it's due. This foundational committee was led by some true heavy hitters. We're talking Professor P.C. Mahalanobis as chairman, alongside Professor D.R. Gadgil and Dr. V.K.R.V. Rao. This trio literally established the framework we still use today to measure the nation's financial health. They were the architects of India's economic measurement.
Moving on to part two, defining national income.
The National Income Committee actually gave us a beautifully precise definition. They stated that a national estimate measures the volume of commodities and services turned out during a given period, counted without duplication. Now, that last part, without duplication, that is absolutely crucial. Think about it. If you count the value of raw steel, and then you also count the full value of the car made from that exact same steel, you're counting the steel twice. So to get an accurate picture, we only count the final value of goods and services. If we break that definition down, we get 4 core features. First, it's a macroeconomic concept. So we're looking at the entire economy, not just one household. Second, it's a flow concept. It's a continuous stream of production over time, not a static snapshot. Third, it strictly relies on money value. So if you paint a picture for your living room, it doesn't count. But if you sell it at a gallery, boom, it counts. And finally, it factors in the rest of the world through net income from abroad. Basically, our exports minus our imports. And since national income is a flow concept, it has to be measured over a very specific time frame. In India, that financial year is strictly tracked from the 1st of April to the 31st of March. That's the official timeline for the nation's economic scorecard. Okay, part 3, the circular money flow. This right here is the beating heart of macroeconomics. The circular flow of income shows how money continuously loops between different sectors of society. Money doesn't just sit in a vault somewhere. It's this dynamic, unending process where one person's expenditure instantly becomes another person's income. Let's break down the math and build this from the ground up. We start with a simple 2-sector model featuring just households and business firms. Here, income, or Y, equals consumption plus investment. Then we can add the government to make it a 3-sector model, tacking on a G for government spending. And finally, we scale up to the real-world 4-sector model, which brings in the foreign sector, adding our net exports into the equation. But to really grasp the concept, let's isolate that basic 2-sector model. It works in 2 continuous steps. First, in the factor market, we, the households, supply the raw factors of production to businesses. You know, our labor, land, capital, and enterprise. In exchange, they pay us rent, wages, interest, and profit. Then, in step 2, the commodity market, businesses use those factors to create finished goods and services. They supply them back to us, and we use our newly earned income to buy them. It's a perfect, endless loop.
Which brings us to part 4, decoding GDP and beyond. We have to start with the ultimate baseline, GDP, or gross domestic product. By definition, this is the gross market value of all final goods and services produced strictly within the domestic territory of a country during a period of 1 year. The key word here is domestic. If it was made inside the borders of the country, whether by a local company or a foreign factory operating on local soil, it counts toward the GDP. But economists often argue that GDP doesn't tell the whole story. Why? Because machines break down. Technology gets obsolete. That wear and tear is called depreciation. If you take that gross GDP number and simply subtract the depreciation of your country's assets, you arrive at the net domestic product, or NDP. It gives you a much more realistic view of the wealth actually generated, because it accounts for the cost of keeping the economy running.
Now, what if we want to look beyond our borders? When we compare GDP to GNP, gross national product, the crucial difference shifts from geography to ownership. GNP takes that domestic value and adds the net income generated by residents from abroad. So if an Indian company makes a profit overseas and brings it home, that boosts the GNP. And just like before, if you subtract depreciation from GNP, you get NNP, or net national product. It's all about adding layers of real-world complexity and actually calculating these metrics, whether you're using the output method by tallying production, the income method by tracking earnings, or the expenditure method by summing up spending, comes with immense practical difficulties and strict precautions to avoid that dreaded double counting we talked about earlier.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something to really think about. We've seen how meticulously a country can measure the flow of trillions of rupees. Adjusting for depreciation, borders, and global trade, we can calculate the macro numbers flawlessly. But does a rising GDP or a perfect national income estimate actually reflect the reality of your personal microeconomy? Does the nation's wealth guarantee the individual's well-being? It's a question that keeps economists and all of us constantly searching for better answers. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and as always, keep questioning the numbers.